recording. There we go. It should be recording in the cloud. I will record these lessons and then post them in the weekly learning. So that's actually a good transition for me to share my Blackboard screen here. So I'll just share my screen. So yes, each week, the chat so I can see you guys. Cool. Each week will be recorded, and then it'll be a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous. And some weeks when there won't be any live, I'll have pre-recorded videos where I'm going to post, like multiple 10-minute videos, and you'll follow the part 1, part 2, whatever. And then you'll be able to just follow along the instructions and, pause the video, play the video whenever you want. And then I'll also be available if you guys ever want to do meetings or, get some extra help. Just email me. Okay, can you see my screen? Which screen am I sharing? Which screen can we see? Oh, I'm sharing the wrong screen. There we go. This screen. There we go. This is the one I wanted. Cool. All right, so this is the main page for Introduction to C++. You guys are in your 4th semester now, I believe, right? So you guys will be pretty used to Blackboard and everything. Let me just open up my chat so I can see. Cool. Any announcements you'll see will be here. So this one just got sent out yesterday. The Webex, obviously, everyone who's here has figured out the Webex, but I'll post this recording. So for those of you who didn't figure out the Webex, you just click this link. It'll open up a new tab, and then each meeting is already laid out there. I will just click start. Usually I'll open it up 15 minutes before. So if you want to join early and just make sure that everything's working with your mic and your headphones, that will be open up early. And it's 11 a.m. each day. Okay. And I'll give you plenty of warning if it's not going to happen. In course information here, you'll be able to see, so here's my name, here's my email if you need to get a hold of me. I probably won't respond to emails on weekends just because I'm usually pretty busy. And I'll get back to your emails within 48 hours, so within 2 days, if you guys have questions for me. The hours are 11 to 1, and then everything is online. And then here you can see the course outline. The syllabus will be uploaded here. I'll go through it with you guys today. I'm just making a couple minor modifications to it still, but we can go through those things now. So if you click this one, it will open up in a new tab. This is the course outline. These are like the actual legal or guidance given by the college itself. So this isn't what I make. This is given to me for the actual course outline. So basically, there's going to be 42 hours of class. It'll be a combination of all these types of learning. If you wanted to read the description, we're going to cover encapsulation, polymorphism, inheritance in C++. We're going to learn about C++ grammar syntax, and we're going to learn about object manipulation, object-oriented programming, the difference between object-oriented programming and classes, functions, operators, overloading pointers, and dynamic memory allocation. Don't freak out if all that stuff sounds crazy or like what some of those words are. If you know them, that's great. If you don't, we're totally going to cover it. We've got lots of time to do that. So here's the course content. It's all going to be covered in here. Same thing pretty much, encapsulation, C++ libraries, standard input, output, pointers, references, polymorphism, data types, declarations, operators, control structures, and all of these arrays, global variables, etc. The passing grade for this course is 50%, and it's going to be a mix of 40% tests and 60% assignments and projects. And I'll show you a breakdown of what those assignments and projects will be in the syllabus just after this. Cool. So test exams and assignments must be written and submitted at the time they're due. I'm sure you guys are all used to this now. It's your second year. We have due dates, and then for every day that it's not handed in, there's a late mark associated with it. I'm pretty lenient with that stuff. Like, if you actually have a legitimate excuse and you give me time, like in notice well ahead, not just like the night of at 11:50, like, hey, I'm not gonna get this in. If you let me know like a day before, a couple days before, like, hey, I'm having trouble or I need a couple extra days, whatever, I am very easy with that. As long as you submit the work and the work is your own, I don't really get too frustrated. A thing that does really bother me though is people submitting work that isn't their own. So I've had a lot of history in the past with people taking, my work, and some of that is my own fault for, just sharing some stuff and then people taking it and putting their name on it. So if you are going to share your work with someone in the class just to help them out, because I know, you guys probably program together, you want to help each other out, you guys are friends, that's fine. But you have to be very clear with, the expectations. If I'm, going to help you or verbally or whatever, we can have a call. But if you give your code to someone, you're just as responsible. So I've had that in the past, and I do get really frustrated when I see people submit code. It's really easy to tell when you're looking at people's code, and then you can literally just type it in and find it on GitHub, and it's been from some other library that some random person made. They just downloaded it, unzipped it, and then just submitted it with their name on it. That just is kind of like a pet peeve of mine. And automatically for all of that kind of stuff, you just get a 0. So if you're going to plagiarize or say some work is not your own or is your own when it's not, there's penalties for that. So just keep that in mind, not to scare you guys or anything, because if you are doing all your work on your own, then you have nothing to worry about, kind of thing. Cool. So the learning outcomes of this class, there's 4 here. So use predefined objects in classes to create a modify a C++ application. Create new objects and classes to represent entities from a problem domain to become proficient in building programming solutions for real problems. Design, develop, deploy C++ applications in order to recognize the value of object-oriented programming, and construct objects that interact in a useful way in applications in order to recognize the value of object-oriented programming. So if that stuff kind of sounds wordy to you, don't worry about it. These 4 learning outcomes are basically going to be what you walk away with, like these major things like understanding object-oriented programming and being able to implement it in C++ is basically what that's saying. So don't worry too much about this wordiness or anything like that. Let's go to the syllabus here. Cool. Is there any questions so far? You can always interrupt me whenever you want, or just type in the chat and I'll see it. No questions? Cool. All right. Awesome. Just get this ready. Okay. So for the syllabus, like I said, I'm still kind of working on it. It's not fully finished, but I'll upload it by next week so you guys can access it in that same course information section on Blackboard. So a lot of this is the same as some of your other classes, 11 to 2 on Webex. Here's that course description that we already went over. The textbook I'm going to be referring to most of the time is Mirach's C++ programming textbook. You do not have to purchase this. It's just going to be, something that I refer to, something that's helpful, and you'll see some references to it throughout the course. If you want to, by all means, go for it. I think it's like $59, probably American. So, 90 bucks Canadian or something like that. So don't feel like you need to purchase it. I'll be posting little snippets of it on Blackboard, anything that's helpful, or slides or whatever that refer to it. So if you want to, you can go out there. These are the authors, but no pressure at all to purchase that, okay? And then everything else will be posted on Blackboard. So marks, announcements, notes, and all those materials will be on Blackboard. I like to separate everything into weekly learning. So coming back to Blackboard here, close these. In weekly learning, you'll see nothing as of right now, but what I like to do is I make a content folder for each week. So this would be week 1, and everything we cover, including the recording of this video, will be inside of the week 1 folder there. And then each week I'll kind of unhide or create the week 2, week 3, week 4 folders, and everything that we covered in there will be in that. Okay. So if you ever are lost, then just go to the weekly learning and then just kind of browse through to see something. Here's my email again if you wanted to find it there. Office hours, I don't really have specific office hours, but if you want to meet, we can meet over Webex, and then we just can schedule it in advance. I'm typically available Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then on Fridays I teach all day as well, so I wouldn't be able to meet on Fridays, but yeah, if you just give me advance notice, then I can try to work something out with you guys if you guys want to have a meeting. Cool. Expectations for success. Sorry. You probably have seen these in some of your other professors' syllabuses, but basically attending online classes as much as possible. So some of the classes I taught last semester, which was my first time teaching over the lockdown, um, I only had one student actually coming. And so it was really, really difficult when some students that weren't coming to class, when they were having trouble and they were asking questions and stuff, I would try to help as much as I can. But I need you guys to do your part, which is attending the class as well and coming to class on time, asking those questions when you have those questions, and just being, available and involved in the class. Um, Asking for help as often as you require it, using the textbook and the resources that I post on Blackboard, accessing the Blackboard site, keeping an eye on the announcements so that you're aware of what's happening from week to week, understanding how you learn, practicing. So I'm going to try to do at the end of each week little challenges or labs that you guys can do. They'll be worth like really, really small amounts of your final mark, but basically, if you're doing that and you're practicing, you're going to learn a lot faster and you're just going to reinforce what we cover in class. So yeah, practice, practice, practice. Okay. Enjoying the process of learning. So C++ can be a really confusing and really challenging language. And it can get incredibly complex when you get into some of the higher, more advanced stuff. Don't get frustrated. Don't give up because you will have errors and you will have those times when you're trying to program and you don't understand what's going on. You just got to push through it and you got to endure through the errors and just if you have to take a break, take a break. But just enjoy the process of, when you do overcome that error and you beat that challenge, just enjoy that moment and yeah, keep challenging yourself every day and you'll just get better at C++. Um, Independently obtaining material from classes that you aren't attending. So for the people that aren't there this week, if you need stuff, if you have questions, email me or just go onto Blackboard and get that material. Stay focused on the course material during class. So when we talk about whatever we're talking about during class, just being involved, like I said earlier. And then if you do email me, just giving a descriptive subject so that I can actually kind of keep track. I get a ton of emails, and then also your full name. I don't necessarily need your student number as much. Just using your names is enough for me. But yeah, everything in your emails, just try to be as descriptive as possible. It makes it a lot easier for me to help you out if I can understand the problem you're having. If you just send me like a screenshot of an error, I'm not necessarily going to know everything that's going on. So here's a little breakdown over the year of what we're going to try to cover in terms of like what's going to be worth marks. So in-class exercises and assignments will be a cumulative mark of 20%. It's not like there's going to be one that's 20%. It'll be kind of like each week for 10 weeks, each one will be 2% or something like that. I think this semester has 14 weeks in it, so there will be a couple weeks where we don't have any in-class labs or tiny assignments. So like this week, for example, there'll be like a tiny something, but not every single week there will be an in-class exercise. Then we'll have major assignment 1, major assignment 2. Those will be later on in the year, so right before reading week. So I think that's like week 7. We'll have a 20% assignment, and then major assignment 2 will be more towards the end of the year. Test 1 and test 2 will also kind of be similar timing. I'm going to try to space them out a little bit so that it's not all at once, but it just kind of works out, with the midterm and then the final to put them, more towards the breaks. Cool. So schedule of activities. This is kind of the part that I'm still working out here in the weekend 8 and 9. But if you want to ever refer to this, this is going to kind of give a breakdown of what we cover each week. And if you ever want to go back to it to understand, oh crap, I need this file, which weekly learning folder is it going to be in Blackboard, you can come here and then you can look, oh, that's week 3. We did loops in week 3. I'm going to go to the week 3 learning and I'm going to get the files that I need for loops. So you can see here, again, some of this stuff is going to be shuffled around a little bit, but this week is just an introduction to C++ and how to write our very first program. We're going to get our environment, our IDE set up today. And then I do want to put a little bit of a challenge there for you guys, so that might shuffle down a bit. But basically, there's going to be 5 of these assignments, and they're going to total up to be 20%. And you can see your major assignment 1 here is in week 6, and then the test is the week after that. These are the lessons that we're covering. So if you ever want to look back at that, I already covered that. Assignment 2 is going to be week 11, and then the final exam will be in the final week. And then I can put dates in here if you need, but cool. So the sequence and content of this syllabus might change, so I am still working on it a little bit, but if you ever need to refer to it, this will basically be the meat and potatoes of what we're doing. It might change from week to week, depending on how slow or fast we're moving as a class, and if there's anything we need to cover. Cool. And then all of this stuff for the rest of the syllabus is basically, you've probably seen it 1,000 times before now: evacuation and lockdown information, campus closures, sexual violence, and then who you can contact for that stuff. So, there's just links in there if you need. Cool. Any questions about anything after that? No questions? Awesome. Everything seems fine so far. Cool. Thank you, Bura. Hope I'm saying your name correctly still. Cool. Well, then, without any further ado, let's get started here. I like to use PowerPoint quite a bit, and I'll post the slides afterwards. So yeah, we'll do a little bit of a welcome and intro. I've kind of covered this a little bit before. Just do slideshow. Awesome. If I put this on the screen, does it block your view if I put the chat over the screen or no? Camera's a little bit bright there. Okay. Okay, so you don't see the chat, that's not blocking it? Awesome. Maybe leave it there. Cool. All right. All good. Sweet. Okay, cool. So yes, I already gave you a background about me a little bit, and my years at Georgian. One other cool fact that I always like to brag about 6 months ago, 6 months ago, 7 months ago, I got home from living overseas as well in New Zealand. So I went over there in between the time of Ireland and New Zealand. I got married, and then my wife and I, we lived there for the year of 2020, which was kind of a good spot to be with COVID and everything. And we did our degree at the University of Canterbury for teaching and learning. So I've got my degree in computer science, and then I also got a graduate diploma in teaching. So hopefully that helps me out with my teaching. But yeah, cool experience living there overseas. So for anyone here who's living overseas, I can always empathize with, you know, that kind of stuff. Time change, how difficult it is being away from family and stuff. So yeah, if you ever needed to email or talk or anything like that, just know that I've kind of been in those situations. And it's a really neat opportunity living in countries abroad. So just take it all in as much as you can and enjoy your time. Um, but yeah, I like throwing that little fact in there just because New Zealand's a pretty cool spot to be. So if you ever can travel to it, I recommend it. Um, cool. So I'm going to assume for this course that basically you guys are all completely new to C++. Some of you might have experience for it. Some of you, like Raymond was saying, have heard the myths and the legends of C++, this amazing language. And some of you guys have maybe actually used it before. I'm going to just assume that we're starting from scratch, that you guys have maybe some experience. I know you guys have done Java a couple times. So I'm going to assume that you have some programming experience and like if I refer to variable or a class or a function, you guys know what that is. Is that a correct assumption for me to make? Yes. Okay, cool. I'm going to introduce new topics in a very specific order. So as we go. This is going to be really practical for you guys, and sometimes you may see something and be confused about it, but I'll talk about it a little bit later on and explain it. So if you do have questions, you can totally ask it. If it's one of those things that I'm going to talk about in the future, I'll just say that. So we're going to be learning, so you see this thing here about modern C++. So we're going to learn our curriculum, and it's going to be with modern C++. Basically what that's meaning is we're going to be using or learning C++, how it should be used today. And we're going to talk more about what modern C++ is in a little bit here. But yeah, so which version of C++ should you learn? I'm going to be teaching you what's called C++, specifically C++ 14 and C++ 17. And this is kind of going to relate to what modern C++ is, and you're going to understand that there's been many version releases over the years. Many courses don't actually teach modern C++. They focus on the older, obsolete versions, but we're going to be learning 14 and 17. I think there is C++ 20 out now, but reality is a lot of jobs out there that hire C++ developers, since C++ 20 is so new, they haven't actually migrated over to that. So they still are in need of C++ 14, C++ 17 developers. And C++ 20 is very similar to 14 and 17. 14 and 17 were like the massive changes that made C++ modern C++. So you can rest assured with learning modern C++ that you're learning the right version of C++. Cool. This little practice bullet, basically what I'm meaning or referring to with that is, again, if you're new to programming or new to C++ specifically, it is super normal to feel really frustrated at times. So same with music, Bura, like you were saying, you're into music. If you're wanting to learn a new instrument like guitar or something, and you get really frustrated, sometimes you want to smash your guitar. It's normal to feel like that with programming. Don't get discouraged. Don't drop out of the class. I mean, you can drop out of the class if you want. It's totally your decision, but just try to persevere through it. It's normal to be frustrated. It's normal to have bugs. We're going to take a break if that happens and work through it, and we'll fix the issues, right? You take a break and you come back later and you'll be able to program in C++ at the end of this course, all right? We'll all get there. So don't worry if you feel frustrated at some points. We may get there. You may not. You may not feel frustrated, and that's a great thing. But it is such a great feeling when you finally get something that you've been working on running and it's working correctly. So yes, he's agreeing. That's so true. Cool. So there will be challenge exercises to reinforce the content that we learn in most of the sections that we cover. And I encourage you guys to come up with similar problems on your own. So if we have a little challenge exercise, just modify it, tweak it, make it a little bit more complex, or, have fun with it and make it creative. It's such a good way for you to learn programming and get really comfortable with the language if you start making some of the problems yourself. Again, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask me at all. Cool. So I think a little bit what we should cover is why we should learn C++. A lot of people, and I know when I first went to through the same course that you guys are going through, I was like, man, C++ is an old language. It's a dying language. It's like super basic, just above like machine language. Like, why wouldn't I learn something like C# or, something that's way more popular? But if you actually look among it or at the facts, you'll see that C++ is still very, very popular language. And as you can see here, it's often seen as kind of a badge of honor among software developers. You can also, when you add it to your resume, it will more often than not, get you a job interview. And then which programming language is routinely ranked in the top 5 programming languages by popularity and been consistently in the top 10 for close to 20 years, and that is C++. So it's really cool if you look at the charts, and we can look at them in a little bit. C++ is a very relevant language. It's a very powerful language. So, if you do think that it is like, kind of old or, not really relevant, you can stand corrected, I guess. Cool. much, if not most, of software written today is still written in C++, and this has been the case for many, many years. It's not only popular, but super relevant. So if you go to GitHub and you look at active C++ repositories, you'll see that it's still extremely active. And even on Stack Overflow, you can like look at the languages divided by the languages for which questions are being asked and answered, and it's still a super relevant, popular language. There's many leading software titles that are written entirely or partly on C++. So Windows, Linux, and Mac OS X operating systems. C++ has been a part of creating those operating systems. Many of the Adobe products, so you guys probably have heard of them, Photoshop, Illustrator, the MySQL, MongoDB database engines, and many more are written in C++. Boo is saying, as far as I know, nearly most of the modern great games are programmed in C++. So that's correct too. So if you've heard of Unreal Engine, if you know C++, then you can use Unreal Engine to make some amazing games too. Yeah, so that's completely true, Burag. Great point. Yeah, it's very neat, Jillian. Leading tech companies use C++ for many of their products. So Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, PayPal, Google, Facebook, Oracle, like these are the giants of tech that we're talking about here, and they all use C++. So what did I want to talk about here? Basically, learning C++ is going to open up a lot of career opportunities for you. So it is a really important language to learn. If most professional companies are using C++, like Microsoft, PayPal, Google, Facebook, it's going to stand to reason that there's going to be more demand for C++ programmers. The main reason, though, so not only the popularity, but the main reason that C++ should be learned by developers is because it's super powerful. So basically, it's a general purpose programming language, and it supports both procedure and object-oriented programming. So it's super flexible and super fast. So that's kind of where this, statement comes, or the legends that Raymond was talking about it being such a powerful language. It can scale super easily, and it can also be portable as well. So it can do many things that other languages just can't. That's why nearly every major language has a way to interface or code with C++. It's influenced so many languages. So you'll see many elements from C++ in other languages that you learn. So also, if you don't want to go into programming C++ in your job or in the future, even if you learn C++ now, it'll still be a great framework and base to know, because you'll see a lot of other things that are very similar to it in the future. So here's kind of another summary of the things that I was just talking about. For popularity, we can go to see if I can open up the TOB index, which ranks. Do you see the PowerPoint, or do you still see this, or my browser? You see the browser. Cool. So if we go to the TOB index, which is kind of just they've been ranking software languages and programming languages. We can see here the ratings and the change percentage of the top languages, and we can see that C++ is actually the top 4, which is kind of cool. And if we click it, it'll actually take us to another page, and it shows us over the last 20 years the popularity of, or the percentage rating popularity for C++. And it's pretty crazy for a language over 20 years to stay so relevant. You can see obviously back in the 2000s it was way more relevant, but it's still very consistent, and it almost looks like it's coming back up. So yeah, just something interesting to note that over 20 years, with so many languages that have been introduced since then, like C# and all these other new ones like React and Flux and Flutter and everything that's been introduced, that C++ is still just as relevant today. It's pretty impressive. What's another one? This is it. No. There's also the top IEEE rankings. This is from 2017. but C++ was also in the top 5 in IEEE rankings. Trying to figure out why I can't actually copy my links here. Whoops. Sorry, guys. Top programming languages. Just wanting to show you guys the relevance and popularity. Here we go. Of 2021, we can see that C++ is also ranked number 4 on the IEEE ranking system here. So with a score of 92.4, obviously it's not for browser, but for mobile, desktop, and probably networks, we can see that there. There's a bunch of other sites that I have here which basically prove the popularity indexes of C++. Another cool one is ZDNet. Oh, spelled it wrong. Slash article which programming language. See if you can find it. And where? What does that even mean? What does that? Just trying to pull up these. There we go. So this combines popular indexes and creates an ensemble ranking here. This is a really cool read, and I'll put this link on our Blackboard if I go into week 1. If you want to read this, I'll basically just do a web link to this. This is a really great reading. Whoops. Popularity of C++. And if you want to read it, I'm trying to submit. You'll be able to read through that there. But basically, we can see here C++ is among the top, number 4 again in the cluster aggregation. But they basically create a popularity index with an ensemble ranking and analysis of data. And this is a really interesting read to go through this. So basically, bottom line, we go back to my PowerPoint here. It's a very popular language among software developers. GitHub repositories just prove this. It's still relevant, so many major companies still use it. VR, Unreal Engine, that's kind of what you were talking about there, Bura. And then the power flexibility. It does have a lot of complexity as well, but learning the basics can be pretty easy. You're reading ahead there, yes. Some of you may have heard C++ equals salary plus plus, but basically, basically having that skill on your resume, it's such a sought after skill that people are willing to pay a lot more money for that kind of skill. So yeah, that was kind of skipping ahead, but we talked about leading software titles and game engines. Having it on your resume is a very admirable skill. Since it's a root language, it's a very solid foundation to learn other languages. Cool. So yes, salary plus plus. So a little bit of a history behind C++, just so you guys kind of understand. It's really interesting. And we were talking about what modern C++ is versus C++ standard. For you guys to understand and know a little bit behind classical C++ and modern C++. So it started in the 1970s with a guy named Dennis Ritchie. He created a C language, basically at Bell Labs, and it was very closely tied to the development of the Unix operating system. In 1979, I don't know if I'm saying the name right, but Bjarne Stroustrup, okay, made an adjustment to this language, the C programming language that Dennis Ritchie made, but he added classes to it from a language that he knew called Simula. So basically, those were the features for object-oriented programming. When he added classes, that was a huge deal. The name changed in 1983 to C++, and then in 1989, that was the very first commercial release. In 1998, the standard C++ Standards Committee released or published the very first C++ standard known as C++ 98 standard. And And then same thing in 2003, they published the 2003 standard. And then you'll see these last three, 2011, the C++11 standard, C++14 standard, and C++17. They're bolded. So what that means is basically these changed the language moving forward. It's kind of a renaissance if you look back at the history of C++ from 2011 to 2017. That is what modern C++ is all about, is these changes. It changed a ton about C++, and they're known as modern C++. So if we kind of compare, what do I mean when I say modern C++ and the C++ standard or classical C++? Generally, anything before C++11, pre-C++ 11 standard, is considered classical C++, so it's older. All right, anything 11 and forward is considered modern C++. On the right-hand side here, you can see it has a lot of new features. C++14 made some smaller changes to that, and then C++17, there was some simplification in there. Basically, modern C++ is a way of saying C++ as defined as today. There's new ways of managing objects in memory, lambdas, smart shared pointers, and threading, and more that were basically a part of modern C++. In this course, we're going to be using modern C++. So I'm going to be talking about features that were introduced in 11, in 14, and 17. So that way, when I mention, I'll probably tell you guys, oh, this was a feature from C++14. Then you'll know where to look. If you're curious, you can look in the documentation of C++14. Cool. So I'm assuming that you guys know a little bit about programming by now in your fourth semester, and you know how programming works. But if you're completely new to it, then some of these terms might be new to you. The most important thing to remember is the computer is not smart. It's going to do exactly what you tell it to do. So writing a program is exactly like a recipe, and with C++, that's incredibly true. So if you wanted to bake a cake, you know, if you told someone to throw in some eggs into a bowl, they might understand you have to crack the eggs first and then put the egg yolk and the egg white into the bowl to mix it. A computer would just be like, oh, eggs in the bowl, and put it in with the shell and everything, and it's just going to do what it's told. So you have to be, and remember, be very careful when you're telling the computer what to do. Cool. So it's not going to understand exactly what it's told to do by the programmer. So yeah, we just have to keep that in mind. Next, so source code. Just want to find my notes here. So in this class, we're using C++, and the code we write in the IDE is going to be called source code. It's generally higher than computer code. So computer code or object code is basically like binary. Have you guys done a course on binary yet, like the math course where you do the conversions of binary and hex? Have you guys had that yet? I can't remember what semester that is. Okay, cool. So you know what machine code is, and you know like binary and hexadecimal and that kind of stuff. Cool. Yes, first semester. Awesome. So source code is generally higher level than computer code, and it needs to be understandable by humans because we're not very good at reading zeros and ones. Basically, we're going to use programming editors like word processor, but a little bit fancier, specifically designed to write these recipes or these programs for C++ programs. They have extensions like CPP or .h, like a .header file. So it's not like a typical .txt program that you would write, and you probably know that from some of your Java programs that they have different extensions. So in this course, we're going to be using .cpp and .h. There's other extensions in C++ like .cc and .hpp and several others, but we're just going to stick to .cpp and .h for the extensions for the code that we write. Just like humans aren't very good at reading computer code, computers aren't very good at reading source code. So we need to translate the source code to a form that's understandable by the computer. That is called object code. And the compiler is basically the translator. So the compiler translates the source code to the object code, right? So binary or other low-level representation of code for computers. Basically, it's going to take the C++ program that we write as input, so that source code, and then it's going to produce object code as output. So if the source code has errors in it, then it won't produce object code. All right. So since our code might depend on code that other programmers write, so if you include another library that's an external library, um, if we want to reuse code that someone else has written, then it might make it easier for us to solve our problems. So let's see. There's a program called a linker as well with C++. We have our compiler, which is the translator from source code to object code. And then there's also a program called a linker, and that takes our object code and the object code that exists out there in the form of other libraries. So external libraries like input, output stream, IO stream, and stuff like that, that's already been written. And it links all of those together. So those external ones, the object code that we already compiled and translated, and it links them together into one executable program. And that program is now what we can run on our computer that follows that recipe that we told the computer to do using C++ in our source code. Does that make sense? I know I'm kind of all over here, but basically we have source code gets compiled, translated into object code. The linker takes that object code and any other external libraries and links them together into one executable file, and then we can run that executable file. That's how C++ works. Any questions? All good. Cool. So now that the program's complete, we can test it to see and find as many errors as possible. So that's called debugging, and we debug to eliminate any of these errors. As you can see, there's a ton going on here, and this is just all very high level what's happening. So we use an IDE or an integrated development environment, so kind of like a really pumped up text editor, and it allows you to do everything that we just mentioned from a common interface. So sometimes you think that this whole process is magic because you just hit that little run button at the top or that build or clean or rebuild button, and it does all of this in the background. It compiles it, it links it to the external libraries, and then it builds that executable file. You don't need to necessarily know everything that's going on, but it is good to know at a high level that there's the source code going into the machine code or object code that gets linked into the executable file. Cool. So we can kind of look at this in a little bit of a visual manner here. So let's say here we have our source code. All right. So we've got file 1, file 2, file 3, and main CPP. All right. We can have as many C++ source files as we want. In this course, we'll mainly be using main.cpp until our programs get a little bit larger, but you can have as many files as you want. All right. So basically, production C++ programs, they can have hundreds or thousands of source files, but since we're just learning the basics and an introduction to C++, our programs will be a lot smaller. So what we need to do is now compile our C++ code using a compiler. All right. The compiler, if there's no errors in any of the source code, will then generate object code for each C++ source file. So here's our .obj files, as you can see. So for each file, it translates it into object code that the machine or the computer can now read. On Windows, object files have a .obj extension, and on Unix or Mac, they have a .o extension. Finally, these object files and any other libraries in our program must all be linked together into one executable file that can run. On Windows, the file extension will be a .exe, and on Unix and Mac, they typically don't have an extension. So remember, we're not done yet. We have to test our program to make sure that there's no logic errors and debug it to eliminate those errors. So here's the linker. And we need to link our C++ standard library with any of the other libraries, and basically they'll create one executable program or a main.exe on our machine. Cool. So that was just a little bit of a visual representation of what's happening here. They get compiled and translated into OBJ files, linked together into one executable file, and the linker is grabbing stuff from our library as well as other external libraries, and then we have our program that we can run. Cool. All good. Cool. So I wanted for this course, we can kind of look at some of the IDEs that are out there, but I kind of wanted an IDE that was going to be free. I wanted it obviously to be cross-platform. So this actually will be a very interesting question for me. Who is using Mac? Like just type something in the chat. I don't know if I can see like the thumbs ups or whatever. Is everyone using Windows or is everyone using a different operating system? Windows. It'll be helpful for you to know. If everyone's using Windows, then that's great. Is anybody using Mac at all? No Mac users? Okay. Well, I was thinking of using Visual Studio, but I actually, well, I'll show you what I ended up on, but I wanted something that was cross-platform, so it worked for Mac if someone had a Mac in this, but I think everyone has Windows, which is good. I wanted it to be free, so Visual Studio, I think for you guys is, well, it is free now if you get Visual Studio Code, and there are ways, and I'll show you how to do it in Visual Studio if that's your preferred development environment. And I wanted to also have relatively small hardware requirements to run. So if you had like a older laptop or if not the best computer, then I have a very, yeah, the community version is free. That's right. Um, if you have a older or a lightweight computer, then this IDE that I've chosen is pretty lightweight. So in this course, we're going to use something called CodeLite. Yeah, you can get Enterprise for free while you're a student, right? Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio Community is all free. You can use that totally up to you. Visual Studio is a great development environment for Windows, and if you have Windows, then you can do that. I'm going to show you guys how to do a setup with CodeLite today, because it meets all of these criteria. There's no perfect IDE, and as a professional developer, you're going to use different IDEs all the time, depending on the team or the consultant that you're working for. And you might have, preferences for what you like for command line interface and all of that. As you gain experience with it, try different IDEs. If you want to do Visual Studio or Xcode, Eclipse, NetBeans even has a C++ extension. But CodeLite, as I mentioned, is what we're going to use in this course. It's free, it's cross-platform, it's fast, and the memory requirements are very minimal. So if you can't run Visual Studio, then this is a great option. Cool. So here we can see on the next page. So NetBeans, like I was talking about, it's the Oracle IDE. It's mainly used for Java, which you guys have probably used for your Java. What do you guys use for your Java? Do you guys use BlueJ, NetBeans, Eclipse? Oh, you guys use IntelliJ. Cool. So IntelliJ is really expensive though, um, unless you're a student, right? You get it for free as a student, but then as soon as you're not a student, you don't have access to it anymore. Is that how it works? IntelliJ has a really awesome C++ environment as well, so you can play around with that as well. Because I remember using IntelliJ in the past, but you have to prove either you're a student or if it's for education. I mean, we can definitely try it. I don't have it ready today, but we can definitely try to do that if you want to do it all on IntelliJ. Cool. So NetBeans, it's mainly for Java, but they've got a plugin for C++. It's actually pretty good, but it's not great because it has really high memory requirements. So you have to install Java JRE. So it's not always super fast. Same thing with Eclipse. It's cross-platform, but it has really high memory requirements. Sea Lion is the one by JetBrains, who make IntelliJ, I believe. They made Kotlin, Android Studio, IntelliJ. It's a really cool IDE, but it's not free. It's very expensive unless you are a student, I think. But you can look up Sea Lion if you want to see if you can get a free version of it. Community version is free. Community doesn't have profiling tools. Yeah. The thing with Visual Studio is if someone is using a Mac, they don't have a C++ plugin for Mac. Like it's a bit more difficult to get it working on Mac. But if you want to use Visual Studio on your Windows machine, that's okay. So yeah, you can try Sea Lion. You can get a 30-day trial of it and see if you like it. Visual Studio and Xcode are Microsoft and Apple's developments, respectively. They're both great. One only runs on Windows for the C++ version, and then the Mac version only runs on Mac for Xcode. Cool. So yeah, here's the list of the ones. CodeLight is the one that I'm going to be showing you guys today. If you want to try to do, oh, they have a version. Is it? Yeah, that's IntelliJ. But what about Sea Lion? That's the one I'm talking about here. This fifth one down on the list. Anyways, so basically IDEs, integrated development environments, they come with editor, compiler, linker, debugger, all of that in one. They keep it all in sync, and you don't have to worry about it. Cool. So I'm going to stop sharing that for a sec and get my other PowerPoint. Ready? Look up Sea Lion really quick. Cross-platform IDE. You can get a 30-day free trial. Yeah, we'll look into this. I'm going to show you guys CodeLight today, but if you can get, if you have a preferred IDE that you like working with, then totally do that. The thing is with the Sea Lion or IntelliJ or whatever, basically after you're not a student anymore, you're going to lose access to it. Right? So you might get really good on using that and then you're going to lose access to it and maybe, you know, have to use something else. So just for learning the basics of C++, CodeLight's going to be great for what we want to do. And it's a really lightweight interface and there's not a whole bunch of confusing things. Some of those bigger like Visual Studio, Xcode, Sea Lion, they have a ton of other features that we're not really going to be using anyways, and they can kind of just make it a bit messy. So you can use it if you want. It's totally your choice, but I'm going to be showing you guys CodeLight as my choice here. So I'm going to open up my installation PowerPoint here, and we're going to go through this together, okay? So no one is using Mac. That's correct. I just wanted to make sure. If you're using Mac, just say something in the chat really quick, because I can just skip a whole version of what we've got here. Okay, let me just present this. Installation and setup. I'll show you which version. Show presenter. Share screen. Awesome. Let me know if you can see that. Chat up here. Okay. So basically, we're going to look at installing a C++ compiler and then the development environment, configuring the development environment, and then creating a default project template in that IDE so that every time we make a project, it'll be really easy to start and use, and we don't have to change all the settings every single time. So the compiler is a separate download and a separate install than the IDE, and you need the compiler to work with C++. They are, remember, one's the translator for the source code to the object code, and then the IDE is just what we're using to write the source code. So we're going to install the compiler first, and then we'll install CodeLight. I can show you guys both operating systems. No one said they're using Mac, so I'll just go through the Windows version, and then we're going to create that template. Okay, so this is the URL you're going to want to go to. I'll copy and paste it in the chat. Whoops. I'll type it in the chat since I can't copy it. It's called MingW. If you click that link, it'll take you to, and I'll show you, it'll take you to a page, let's see here, that looks something like this. And you're going to want to scroll down until you find the MingW W64 builds. All right. It should be version 7.2.0, 5.03. You'll see it's for C++. All right. So if you click that, it'll take you to a SourceForge installation link right here. It'll just scroll you down that page. Just click the SourceForge and download right there. Okay, your download will start shortly. Cool, and then you'll just save that file. Remember, this is the compiler, so this is going to be what translates all our C++ code. Cool. Has everybody got that downloaded? You can give me a thumbs up. You can give me whatever. You can tell me to wait if you want a second. You got it downloaded. Cool. So you can open it. Once it's downloaded, you can run it, and you should start the setup wizard. So you hit save file, run, and then the setup wizard will look something like this. Welcome to the MinGW W64 online installer. All right, and you'll just go next, and it'll install. You're going to want to, this is really important, okay? When you install it, and if you already haven't done the install, yep, I'll upload the PowerPoint to Blackboard. Do you want it right now? I can upload it now. Very important step here, okay? You want to install it somewhere that does not have spaces. Like under your username, if you have a space in your username, so I think by default, the program files is fine to install it to program files. Let me see where I installed mine. See, program files. GW, yeah. Okay. So this is an okay directory to install to because it's the Windows folder with the space. It knows what it's referencing, but later on you'll see you might run into issues if your username has a space in it, which mine did originally because I put my last name and my username on this computer. You'll run into some issues. So mine is installed here in my local disk C program files MinGW W64. Yes, I'll upload the PowerPoint right now, sorry. So just give me 1 minute, guys, while I upload this PowerPoint. Okay. Item. This is the installation PowerPoint. Local files. Installation. There it is. All right, and once that uploads, you'll see it there. Okay, you have a screen of version architecture etc. Should I go default on it? I'm not sure what you mean by your question. You have a screen of version architecture. All my stuff was default when I installed. So on my PowerPoint here, like this, you just hit next and default. So actually, I should try to download this. HW, save it in downloads. I might get you to share your screen in a sec if it doesn't come up for me here. I'll just run through it. Once it's downloaded, you unzip it. You did unzip it before, Boora? Mila, can you see the PowerPoint that I uploaded? It should be there. I'm just unzipping it, but it's taking a little bit of time because it's also recording this lecture at the same time. Cool, no worries, Mila. Is it asking you about which version of the architecture. I don't remember having that when I installed it. I just want to see when I do run through this here, though. Yeah, this is really slow. Yeah, sure. Share your screen, and we'll see. You have to stop sharing my screen in order for you to. Yeah, let's take a look. Go for it, Bura. If you want to share your screen, you can show me what you're looking at there. Right. So you can hit next on that. Yes. Okay, this is important. And I forgot to mention this. So you have to know what architecture your machine is. So sorry about this. I completely forgot about this step. You have to know if you're running a 64-bit or a 32-bit system. And you can figure that out by typing in about your PC into the start window. So if you go to your start window and you type about your PC, Burat, you'll be able to, I'll just be able to show everybody here. About your PC. And then it should say under system type, while it's loading up here, whether or not it's 64-bit or 32-bit. So right there, you have a 64-bit on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th version down. Yeah, you highlighted it. Yours says 64. So what you'll do when you go back to the installation setup wizard, under architecture, if you click the version, that underscore 64 is what you want to select if you have a 64-bit system. Let me double check to make sure that's correct. What's the other option there? Can you just hover under the architecture dropdown again? Yeah, so 86 is for 32-bit. 86 underscore 64 is for 64-bit. Yeah, so that's correct. And then threads you leave, exception you leave, and build revision you'll leave. Okay? So leave those all default, hit next. And then, so here, that's a really long name after the minj GW-W64. So just select that, everything after that // and just erase it. Yeah. So now you're going to be installing it to program files /minj GW-W64. Create shortcuts in start menu. Yes is clicked, and then you can hit next, and then we'll go through the installation process. Cool. Awesome. And I believe that's it. So sorry, I forgot that little step. Yeah, you're welcome. That's my bad because I should have shared that with everybody there. You can stop sharing your screen there. And so make sure you check which version of Windows you have. I thought that that was in my PowerPoint, but I must have forgot to include that. Sorry. So make sure you check which version of your operating system you have. I'll share my PowerPoint again here. And then in that little drop down, that is correct, Bura. Thank you for saying that because I would have forgotten otherwise. We would have ran into some issues. Yeah, you select the right one. That's the only option you need to change, and then you can install it like Bura was doing there. And then once it's finished, you can exit the setup wizard. So you can see here for mine, I had the 64-bit version. And so you can see it was 86 underscore 64, just like Bura's was. Okay, cool. You're welcome. Just want to be sure. Yeah, no worries. Awesome. Okay, cool. So once that's finished, we need to update our environment variable path. So we need to set a path in the Windows path environment. So has anybody got questions? I'm going to assume everybody's good, everybody installed it correctly, unless you say something in the chat now or wave your hand or something, I can help you.
Yes, Professor. Can I ask, this I put in the chat, it's what we have downloaded? Been built 1.5.0?
Windows Build 1.5.0 for the version of the compiler?
Yes.
If
It's from link what you put in the chat first.
you're installing 64 version, you're good. Okay. Is that like from the SourceForge link that I shared?
Yes.
Yeah, so that should be, I'm just going to open the link here just to double check. That should be the one. Continue. Click it, MinGW 1.5.0. If I click SourceForge. Where do you see the 1.5.0? Because I don't even see that on mine.
Can I share my screen?
Sure.
Okay, wait, I have to share.
Let me stop sharing mine for a sec here. Right. Stop sharing. Cool.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, so I don't know if this is the same website that I showed you. Do you want to open that link that I sent again in the chat? I'll resend it. This is for the compiler.
Okay, I'm open from PowerPoint.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Raymond, when you reinstall the 64-bit version, make sure you uninstall the 32-bit version if you already haven't done that from the program files.
So as you can see when I go, and this is MV builds, I see just installation.
Oh,
here.
go up to the SourceForge link at the top there. See, no, don't move your scroll. Like, put your mouse, I don't know how to highlight. Oh, scroll up a bit.
Scroll up.
Yeah, right there where it says SourceForge, MinGW builds installation SourceForge in the middle of your page. So stop scrolling. I can see it on your page. Maybe I can highlight it or something. Do you see the word SourceForge there? Underneath that link. One below. Go one link below. Yes, right there. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to wrong link.
No worries. Okay, so then once that downloads, you'll click your, you'll do the About My PC as well. You'll figure out if you're a 64-bit or a 32-bit version.
I have 64-bit.
You have 64-bit, so then you can run the install.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Now I see.
And then
correct.
make sure in architecture, yes, make sure you select the 64-bit version from the dropdown. Perfect. And then you can just go through the rest of it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. All right, I will get back to sharing this PowerPoint. Cool, so everyone's got the compiler installed. The next step is setting the path environment variable correctly. So what is a path environment variable? You may have done this in the past with some other programs. I think you probably had to do it with Java because you're not using the school machine. So you had to like make a reference to the JRE or Java variable. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to point to this compiler. Whenever we make the command call to compile something, it's going to know where to look, where we just installed the compiler in our C/program files /mingw G64, right? And our compiler, the one we're using, is the G++ compiler. So what you want to do is open your start window and type environment variables. So env, and you'll click the very first match. I can do a little demo here as well, so you guys can see env. And it should be a window that looks like this. Okay, can you see this on the screen, or do you just see the PowerPoint? basically I have a giant blown up version of it here. You're going to click the little environment variables button in the bottom right of this window of the system properties, right? And in that, it'll open up a second window, okay? So I have user variables for Ben, that's me, and then you have system variables. You want to be very careful here because if you delete something by accident, you can mess up a lot of stuff. So don't hit, no matter what you do not hit the delete button on either of these. Because if you delete a path variable, you're going to lose reference to all sorts of things. We're going to change, so you could, if you have many users on your system, you could install the path variable for just your user. I'm going to install it on the system because on the system that installs it for all users. So we're going to scroll down until we see something called path, and we're going to select it, okay? The path variable contains a list of all variables and references to different programs so that when we make reference to it, it knows where they're located. And this is where we have to be careful. Do not click the delete button. Click the edit. Okay, we want to edit. We want to add to it. And inside of that, it'll open up a second edit window where we can hit new and create a new path variable. So I already have the path variable here to my mingw w64, but you're going to want to hit new. And then with this new one, we're going to click browse. When you browse, you're going to browse to where you just installed the compiler. So it should be inside local disk C, program files, and then you'll find a little bit lower down in the M section, mingw w64. Expand that and click the bin folder. All right. With the bin folder selected, you're going to click OK. All right. So I'll do that again. My computer, local disk C, program files, and inside of program files, we locate our mingw w64, expand it, and click the bin folder. All right. Then we'll hit OK. When you hit OK, you should get a path variable that looks something like this. Then what I like to do is to move it up a bunch and put it just below the system32 path variables. You'll see I have a lot of path variables on my machine from other things, from programming and other programs that I use. Don't worry about that. We don't have to have the exact same path variables, but as long as you have this referencing the mingw w64 bin, you can move it up just below the system32. Now you can see I have two of them, so I'm just going to delete the one that I made, so I still have this one. All right. You can click OK here and then OK on the second window. I'm going to cancel because I already had this existing. So I'm going to cancel, but make sure you click OK so it saves. OK on this and then OK one last time. All right. Here's some pictures in the PowerPoint if you were a little lost of what I just did. We selected the path variable. We clicked edit. We clicked new. After we clicked new, we browsed to the bin folder of the mingw w64. I'm going to open chat here. Sorry, guys, you probably have questions. You just download CodeLight, the most recent one, and it told me there's a new one. You're way ahead of us here. Okay, I will get there, but don't worry, that's not a big problem. All right. Oh, your alarm's going off. No worries. You didn't unmute the mic. That's okay. All right, so we did that. Okay. After all of this, we can now test to see if we did that correctly, okay? So you're going to want to go to command prompt. So you can type CMD inside of your start bar and open a command prompt window. And then you just type in G++ dash version, all right? And you should get a message. Oh, see, that's not what I want. You should get a message that looks like this. So maybe I just did something incorrectly, but you should get something that looks like 8.1.0. Oh, it's dash version. Sorry, I did dash version. Dash version. So 2 pluses and 2 dashes. And there we go. That's the response that we're looking for. All right. Has everybody got to that point? So that's the compiler. The compiler's installed. If we are all here, any questions? I'd say we take a 10-minute break. We've been going here for an hour and a half. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 12:40. All right, and I'll continue with installing the Code Lite. You can do this yourself if you want to. The PowerPoint's on there if you want to go ahead. I'm going to start back up right at this slide here. I won't go anywhere. I won't do anything. I'll just mute my mic and turn off my camera, pause the recording. If you have any questions, ask them now so I can do this. But we're going to take a 10-minute break. You guys can go to the bathroom, grab a coffee, and then settle back down, and then we'll continue with installing our IDE Code Lite. Cool?
Professor, can I do installation after when you will upload records lesson? Because I need a little bit more time, I think.
With the compiler?
Yes.
For sure. Yeah. Did it not work, or is it still going?
I'm just looking how you did this, so I want to look again and do next time after the lesson will be done. Okay?
For sure. Yep.
Are
I
you
can
will
do it now
upload
too if
this
you want.
lesson this week?
Sorry?
Are you will upload records session this week?
Yeah, I'll upload the recording version. I usually upload them the day after the lesson just because it takes a bit to download and upload.
Okay, thank you. Perfect.
For sure. But everything is in the PowerPoint there with the steps as well if you want to refer to those. Cool. Did you have a question? Like if it didn't install correctly, we can try to work it out now, or do you just want to wait for a sec?
Thank you. I will wait.
Okay, no worries. All right, we'll take a 10-minute break then. I'll pause the recording, unmute, or I'll mute my mic, and then we can go back to continuing, and we'll come back around 12:40, 12:41 or something, okay? All right, welcome back, everybody. I think my mic is back on, my video is back on. Let me know if you can see me, hear me. All right. And I'll resume the recording so we can get back into installing everything. Okay, so you want to know how to test the path variable again. We can repeat that one for sure. Jaskerit, am I saying that right? Jaskerit. It is just G++ space dash dash version. And I'll type it into the chat here for you, G++ dash dash version. You can just put that into CMD.
Actually, Professor, if you could please help me and use to install my path.
Install the path?
Yes, can you share my screen because I'm stuck
For
like
sure.
in the last step.
Go for it. Yeah, I'll stop sharing my screen here. All right, so you found the
I
path
found
variable.
my path here. So here I have to make edit.
Yep.
And create new one.
Yes.
And
To create new and then browse.
Browse. Okay.
You go to this PC, and then you're going to find C drive, the local disk C at the bottom there. Yep. Expand that, go down to program files. There it is.
Program files or program files 86?
Probably program files since you're on a 64-bit machine. Scroll down past the M section and look for Ming. There it is. Oh, a little too far. Inside the M section there, Ming GW64. Expand that folder and then highlight the bin folder, hit OK. All right.
Okay.
And OK. Now you can test it. Open up CMD in your start. There you go. Type in G++ space dash dash version. All right, so it looks like something didn't get installed completely correctly there, so we might have to come back to that one after and see if we can
Okay.
get that working, all right?
Okay.
No
Thank you.
worries. Keep in mind too, anything that you install, you don't want to put it on a cloud drive or like OneDrive or Google Drive or anything like that. C++ is very, very picky with names. So spaces or illegal characters and stuff like that, you want to try to avoid that as best as possible. And cloud drives and all that kind of stuff, they use those weird characters all the time. So keeping it off of the cloud drive and keeping it on your local system is probably the best case scenario. Okay, so we'll go back to, we just set the path environment and we were just testing the path variable. So I'm going to go back into presenting that, sharing my screen. We'll take a look, Mila, afterwards to see if we can figure that out for you, okay? Cool. So we just tested that. This was the G++ -- version in command prompt. Excuse me. Next step is installing CodeLight. So you're going to want to go to codelight.org. This is the website here. I'm going to put it in the chat for you guys really quickly. CodeLight. And it should take you to a page that looks something like this. All right. In the right-hand, upper right-hand corner, you can see download, or you can click the download tab to get to the latest stable release. So if you click that and go to the latest stable release, you should see a screen that looks something like this. I'll open it up in my Chrome so you guys can see a live demo of it. Codelight.org. And we're going to go to download stable latest. And for Windows, all right, you're going to want, if you're a 64-bit machine, you want the 64-bit installer. And if you're a 32-bit machine, you want the 32-bit installer. So it's important to know whether or not you're 64 or 32-bit here. Okay? You're going to click that, and then you're going to save it wherever you like. On mine, I saved it in a similar location under Program Files, CodeLight. All right? Any questions about that, you can just say something in the chat or interrupt me, let me know. Cool, and that should be pretty self-explanatory. I don't know, you guys can tell me here actually, in the setup of CodeLight when you install it, is there any weird options that I'm forgetting about? I don't want to mess you guys up here. I'll install this. See, I think it's pretty straightforward. You just hit yes, yes, you accept the defaults. But I'll just run through it really quickly here on my machine. My downloads are always very slow while I'm recording. That's just because it's saving it in the cloud as I record, but no worries. Any questions on that, or pretty straightforward? The whoever it was, Jillian, I think that you asked, saying that there was a warning about there's a new release for you to download. You can probably just ignore that. It's probably trying to tell you that the weekly build is more up to date than the stable release. But we'll just stick with the 15.0.0 stable release for now, because the weekly build, these are just newer features, and there might be some bugs that might throw us off there. So yeah, you just run this now that it's downloaded. We hit yes to make changes on our computer. I'll bring it over here since I'm sharing this screen. You accept the licenses. Hit next. Create a desktop and a quick launch shortcut. Yes. Click next. And then I would click install if I didn't already have it on my computer. So you can click install and it will go through that step. I'm going to cancel, but again, you can hit install and then you'll have CodeLight on your machine. All right. Everyone should be to that point, and then we can open up CodeLight for the very, very first time, and this is what it looks like. All right, and we're going to configure it a little bit. So opening up CodeLight, you may see a message in the very bottom there that says that there's a new color palette or new color themes. Would you like to restart? Click yes, okay? And then after you click yes, it's going to say a CodeLight restart is needed. Would you like to restart it now? Click yes and restart it again. Okay, that's just so that we can use some of those newer themes and color coding. So just installing the latest version of the theme palettes and whatnot So you'll get that warning on the first start. You'll probably see a setup wizard. Cancel out of that. We'll do that after we do this restart, okay? So cancel out of the setup wizard, hit yes to the code light, and then yes to the code light restart. Any questions? Everybody restart their code light. I'm going to actually open up code light now on my machine. I won't have that message about the color palettes in the bottom, but I will be able to show you what I want to show you next. So I do get this message. I can't show it to you. It says a new version of CodeLight is available for download. I just hit no. It is a little annoying. It pops up. If you hit yes, it just takes you to the download page, and it's the same version as what you already have. So, all right. So you should see, if I close my workspace, it should look something like this when you open. All right. Is this what everybody has? I can get thumbs up, little clap hands, party symbols, party hats, whatever you guys use. Okay, cool. Did you already do the color theme update at the bottom? Hoorah. Not yet, you just installed it. So cancel the setup wizard, right? Because the very first time you'll have the setup wizard there. Just cancel and then hit yes at the bottom, and then it will prompt you to restart it and hit yes. Raymond, you've got an output view. You've not got an output view, but you have the rest of it. Okay, sorry, I'll close that because this is what you should have. Okay, that's only because I just had a project open. But you guys will have no project since it's your first time running the program. It should look exactly like this. All right. What we want to do, now that you've hit yes to the little prompts at the bottom for updating the theme palette and updating the restart, we're going to go to help, run the setup wizard. Okay, that's how you get back to the setup wizard. We only have to do this one time. So we're going to go through the setup wizard and do some of these changes just once. We only have to do this once and then it's finished. Okay, so once you've restarted it, then we can go through this setup wizard. Cool. So the slides cover all of this, help run the setup wizard, and then this is what you'll see. All right. The next step is we're going to select our development profile. We're going to scan to find our compiler, and then we're going to select the compiler that it finds. Mila, you may have an issue with this since your G++ didn't work, but I can help you get that working afterwards.
Sorry, now my G++ works. I'm trying to do path again and it works now, but I just don't understand why you have to do setup here. I just lost something when I split between screens.
So it did work the second time you did it.
Now it works in command prompt, it works.
Awesome. Okay, that's great then. Cool. I'm not sure then what caused that. Maybe it was just a first time glitch or something, but so back
I'm just
to code.
lost where you have started to do setup compiler. Yes, here.
Okay, right here?
Yes, which windows you have used to.
So all you have to do, so what's your question? You just have to hit yes at the bottom and then yes to the restart once it's installed?
Yes, that was restart. And now I have Windows same like you show me. And here where I have to go in setting.
Help, and then
Help.
run the setup wizard.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Jillian, it's not letting me select mine for some reason. Not letting you select what? The Ming. Oh, you don't have to actually select it. So, sorry, I said the wrong words. So I'll go through these one step at a time, and I'll catch up to you there in just a second. So we'll hit next on the setup wizard. All right. Then we're gonna choose C++ development. Okay. If you're doing other stuff, you could leave it as default. If you're doing web development, you could choose the PHP, JavaScript, or if you want to do some blockchain stuff, they have that as well. We're going to be doing this purely C++, so we're going to hit next, and then scan. It's going to scan for compilers. Now, I've already done this, so I'm not sure if it's actually going to find them or not. Yes, it did. So it's going to scan, and it's going to find the compiler in the path that we put it in. If I actually expand this whole window, You can see that's the path that it's installed at. And then there's the install path as well. It should find it. If your G++ command worked, it should find it. It will not find it if you have a space in your username. You can find it what your username is on your computer. If you go to command prompt, your username is right here. I originally, okay, could not find mine through the scan. If you type in echo % username %, it'll return back to you what your username is. If there's a space in there, so originally mine had a space. I'll show you the screenshot of what mine used to be. This was my old username, Benjamin space Van space Aragon. It couldn't find it when I ran the scan in CodeLight, and I had to go follow a tutorial on how to change my name. Jillian and Bura, you guys are having trouble with finding. Do you guys have usernames in or spaces in your username when you run this line of code in your command prompt? You don't have a space in your name. Okay, but when you run the G++ space -- version, it does work. It does, like if you type in this into CMD, you get this back. It does work. Okay. So then with CodeLight, gosh, setup wizard, next, C++, next, scan. So when you scan, it doesn't work. I also, it didn't find it for me one time, and then I had to restart the program another time, and then it worked, or restarting a computer, and then it found it. You don't have to actually select it, Jillian, so it's not actually finding yours either. You think you have a space in your name. If you do have a space in your name, I can send you the tutorial that I followed, but it's a little bit complicated. You're going to toss it on your external hard drive. Yeah, so save it somewhere where there is no spaces. Like try that first and install the compiler somewhere where there's no spaces in the directory, because that will cause a lot of issues. If not, I can send you the tutorial that I followed. I had to change my username, and in order to do that, I had to enable the hidden admin account on Windows, log into the admin account on Windows, and then I had to change the username and change the username path variable through the administrator command prompt on the admin login. So it was a little bit complicated, but I can send you that. The tutorial worked for me when I did that, and then it found it when it scanned. And so Bura closed CodeLight, reopened it, and scanned and found it. Okay, so awesome, that worked. So if it's not working for you, Jillian, try that, like just a little close of CodeLight, open CodeLight, and then rerun it. If that doesn't work, then you might have to try some other stuff. So we'll click next now that we have the setup compiler chosen. You can choose to customize the colors. I'm going to leave mine on system default. If you like the dark mode, that's totally up to you, but I think that the default shows up better on video when I'm going to be doing the videos and recordings. So you can choose whichever color theme you want. And then after this, you can also just leave these, oops. You can leave these indent using spaces and visible always, all right? You can do tabs, it's personal preference. Then you click finish. I've already done this, so I'm gonna click cancel, okay? I just wanted you to close and reopen. So did it work or not, Jillian? All right, and then you finish the setup wizard, and that is all done. Cool. So now what we want to do, I want to make sure that this is right. We did that step. Okay, we scanned. We want to double check that it worked. Awesome, great. Okay, that solves a lot of problems then, Jillian. Sweet, cool. So then you can go through the rest of those steps, finish, and choose your color scheme. Now we want to double check in CodeLight that our compiler was set up correctly. So in the top of CodeLight, you're going to see settings right up here. where my mouse is. You're going to click Settings and then Build Settings. Okay. And then you're going to want to check to make sure that the compiler has some information in it. Specifically, we're looking for the, where is it? The C++ and GDB, I believe, compiler. But you should have information that's referencing the G++. Same for the linker, it should be referencing g++.exe. So for these two, C++ compiler and linker. If you didn't do it correctly, these will be empty. All right, so if you have information here, then that means that your path variable is set up correctly. If it's empty, it means your path variable is set up incorrectly. Okay, so just double check that. Cool. And then you can hit apply or okay. I'm going to cancel because I didn't change anything. Is everybody caught up to this point? Everybody's set up their setup wizard. They have CodeLight installed. They have their compiler working correctly. Thumbs up. Awesome. Cool. Great. That's awesome, guys. So it's 1 o'clock. We're going to just make a basic program just so you guys can learn a little bit. Depending on how far we get, then like I'm just going to kind of talk about how CodeLight works, what a workspace is, and all that kind of stuff. But depending on how far we get, we'll probably stop a little bit early and I'll continue next week with creating our first program in C++. But just getting our environment set up and our compilers working and everything like that is really important so that we can actually write code. All right, so going back to the PowerPoint here, if you want to refer to this later, we're going to create a new workspace. You can do this 2 different ways. So on the home page, there's a new workspace button right here, or you can go up into workspace, new workspace. All right. There's 2 different ways. Whichever way you prefer, you can totally do that. Workspaces, okay, is the model that CodeLight uses. So it works on a workspace model. Basically, a workspace is you can kind of think about it as like a folder. And inside of that folder or inside of that workspace, you can have many projects. So it's just an area that holds projects, and a single workspace can contain many projects. That's all you have to remember. So we're going to do new workspace, and then we're going to choose C++ because that's what we want to program. Okay. Now this is very important here. Okay. I've highlighted it in the PowerPoint. Where you save your workspace, there cannot be any spaces or special characters. Okay. Like I said earlier, C++ is very picky with names, and it does not like or work with spaces or special characters. So if you have to create a new folder, like I did, you can go to whatever drive you want and save it in a folder called C++ projects or COMP2006, but do not put spaces in it. All right. We're going to name our first workspace. And again, no spaces. And you'll see the generated file, and this is going to be the directory name of where it is saving that. And there should be no spaces in there, okay? And then make sure this is checked to create the workspace under a separate directory, okay? Then we can click OK after that. So I'll just go back to CodeLight. I'm going to make sure I'm saving it in C++ projects, and I'm going to name my workspace first workspace. Now I already have made a workspace file with this name. It already exists. It's giving me a warning. So I'm going to just call it second workspace. You can call yours first workspace, okay? Doesn't really matter. It's just a placeholder. It's just a name to hold all our projects, okay? So we click OK. Now you'll see in the left-hand side that this pane has changed. This is our workspace panel or view, and it's going to show the workspace that we have selected. So here's my workspace that I just created, and there's not really much I can do right now, but oh, the other note that I wanted to mention when you're creating a workspace, again, when you're saving it, don't save it on the cloud. Okay, I know I already said it, but when you're creating the workspace as well, don't put it on a OneDrive or anything like that. It will not work, okay? Cool, back to the PowerPoint. You can right-click your workspace, click New, and New Project. That's how we create a project in CodeLight. So second workspace, I'm going to right click it, new project. And we can see what's going to happen is it's going to bring up this little prompt to change all the settings for our project. This is going to be pretty important what we select here. So just make sure you pay attention. I've got it highlighted again in the PowerPoint here. This is very important. If you do this incorrectly, some things might not work. If you're on Mac, the slide after this shows you the settings that you have to use because it is different. There's two different build systems and debuggers that you're going to select. One's for Windows, one's for Mac. Okay, so we're going to name our project Project 1. Okay, and then we're going to create the project in its own folder. We're going to leave that checked. The category is going to be a console project. Okay, and the type is going to be simple executable G++. Remember, that's the code, or that's the command we typed into CMD earlier, G++ -- version. That's the compiler we're using. There's tons of compilers that you can download. We downloaded that what was it? We downloaded the G++ compiler. It was WMANG 64, WMange 64, right? That's the G++ compiler. So console, simple executable G++. The compiler is going to be MinGW. That's the name, MinGW. If you've downloaded multiple, you'd have another option here, right? You'd have two. So the MinGW is the one that we have. For the debugger on Windows, you're going to select GNU GDB debugger. Okay. On Mac, you can use LLDB, but if you're on Windows, it's GNU. Now, this is very important. By default, I think it goes to like CodeLight Makefile Generator or something like that. You want to choose default. If you don't choose default, some things will break. So these are the settings we want. We want console, simple executable G++, MinGW, GNU GDB debugger, and build system default. Make sure there's no spaces in your project name or in your workspace, and make sure this is clicked. Okay? Then we can click OK. When I click OK, you'll notice on the workspace panel on the left, it's going to create a project inside of my workspace with some files. All right? So I'm going to click OK, and you can watch on the left-hand side here. There's my project, Project 1. I've got a little arrow here, and if I expand this arrow, we can see a source, an SRC folder, and if I expand that folder, here's our main.cpp. Remember, .cpp is the file extension we're going to be using for our C++ projects. So if I double-click this, I should be able to see the source code. If I double-click it, the source code is going to appear in this window, which is going to be my text editor, right? So if I double-click main.cpp, we're going to see, here's my source code. I've got line numbers. It's going to say at the top which file I'm in, project1/main.cpp. I can close it and double-click to reopen it. I've got my include statement, which is just a library, an external library that I'm using. And then we've got our main argument, which is something you always need in C++. We'll talk about this later. For now, we'll just delete it, but this should be something that everybody sees. All right? If anybody is not at this point, just let me know in the chat or wave your hand, say something so I can slow down and get everyone caught up to the same spot. Is everybody good so far?
Yes, just if you can explain a little bit about this is include library. It's always should be different, or it's always should be same for our project.
So we're not going to actually worry about this code right now. I'm just going to delete it. You can delete your code too. That's just a default code that was added by CodeLight. I don't want you guys to be confused or think about what it has to be inside of a C++. That doesn't actually have to be there. That's just whatever they put in. So you can just delete it. Don't worry about it. And we'll explain what the include statement is a little bit later when we get into this. Right now, I just want to focus on making sure we understand the CodeLight interface, okay? Cool, awesome. So going back to the PowerPoint, here's the settings again. If you forget or you want to make another project, it's on slide 21. For Mac OS X, remember these are the different settings you need, LLDB debugger, okay? So we're going to remove that C code, okay? And then we're going to type this C++ code. So you can just delete what's in there because we're not going to worry about it. And then we're going to type our own. So include. Now don't worry too much about what I'm typing. I can explain this a lot later and you'll understand it. But IOStream basically is a third-party library, okay, that someone else has written, and I'm going to use my linker, right? We have our compiler, which translates from source code to machine or object code, and then the linker will grab our code and any include libraries from an external library, so in this case the IOStream library, and we'll grab that code somewhere that someone has written on a server or something that's been hosted somewhere, and it will use the libraries and the functions that they've written so that we can use it in our code, and it links them together so it makes one executable file. So we're going to include the IOStream library in this project. Okay. Now we're going to type int main with an open parentheses and a close parentheses. That's not a 0, okay? I know it looks like a 0. If I type a 0, it looks like that. It's an open parentheses and a closed parentheses like that, okay? And then we're going to do an open curly brace with a closed curly brace. Now, I didn't actually type that curly brace. I just hit enter. So if I do one open and I hit enter, it'll automatically close it for me and indent it like that, okay? Now, every project, every C++ project has to have a main function, and it can only have one main function, okay? You can't have two. That's a very important thing to remember. Now, just like in Java, okay, int here is going to be what this function returns. If you had void, it doesn't return anything, right? But we're going to return an int. And basically, what that's going to do is if we return 0, that means there's no errors. It returns 0. But if an error does happen, it will return a different integer. It will return 1 or something like that. So int main is going to be our main method, and we're only going to have one method for this beginning program. Now, we're going to write the following, okay? std : so 2 colons, c out. And that's going to be our output to the console, all right? Then we're going to use the input operator, okay, which is 2 angle brackets, like that, okay? We're going to do an open string, so that's a double quotes. That's not one quote, that's a double quote, okay? Some people will do a single quote together, but it's actually double quote. It looks very similar, so make sure you do a double quote. I'm holding shift and then double quote. Hello, world. And then we'll close the quote here, close the double quote. All right, we're going to do our input operator again, and then we're going to do std : end line, ENDL, okay? Make sure you spell everything correctly. We're going to close that line with a semicolon. Every single line in C++ has to be closed with a semicolon, but not your includes, all right? A quote, not an apostrophe. Exactly, Jillian, you've got it, okay? So we close that line with a semicolon, and then we're going to just return, because we have to return an int, and we're going to return 0. And I'm going to end that line with a semicolon, okay? Now, there's a couple things I want to talk about here. First of all, we can see this color coding on the word return and the word int. We can see they're purple. That's because they're keywords, right? So if you see that, it's basically a syntax highlighter to help us know what words are keywords, but it also can help you with errors. Let's say I forgot to put a double quote here on the hello world. I can see that this whole line is now green, including my semicolon, which should never be green. So I can instantly look at this and tell I forgot to put my double quote or my quote up there, right? Again, if I forget my apostrophe, it won't actually tell me, but when you run it, it'll give you an error. We'll talk about compiler errors after this, but That's the color coding or the syntax highlighting, okay? We can also see that the 0 is like an orangish brown. That's because it's an integer. If I type another number here, we can see it's also the same color. So they've got colors preset for certain things. Semicolon, you mean? Oh, did I say colon? Sorry, semicolon, yes. This is a semicolon. These are colons. You can change the colors and the preferences. Oh, I said apostrophe. Sorry about that, Jillian. You can change all of that in colors and fonts right here in the settings. Okay, but I just like to leave it the default. Cool. So before we run this or anything, I also want to talk about this red line here. So you see this red line? That means that there's been changes made. Okay. The changes have not been saved. When you save, this will be green. Okay. So I can save in different ways. I can do save file, save all files, or I can just do Control S, which I'll type on my keyboard right now. Control S, and we can see that line just turn to green, just like that. Now, if I make a change, if I do Enter, we can see these two lines are red again. That just indicates for you as a developer to know that that's an unsaved change. And if I do Control S, watch right here at line 3 and 4, it'll turn green. All right. Now, the next things we want to do before we run this, we don't want to run this yet. We need to make some changes to our compiler so that we're using modern C++. Okay, because by default, it's not going to be using modern C++. Remember, we talked about classical C++, anything before C++ 11, and then everything after 11 is modern C++. So coming back to our PowerPoint here, after you've typed this code, the next slide is going to show you guys how to change the project settings so that we can enable the C++ 17 features. So you're going to right click on the project and you're going to go to the settings. All right. I'm going to show you that in CodeLight right now. So I'm going to right click on project 1 and I'm going to click on settings right here. Okay. In the settings, I have all these options for general, compiler, linker, environment, debugger, and I can change all the settings for those different things. We're going to change the settings in the compiler. And then over here in compiler options, you're going to click the 3 dots at the end right here. So we can see there's a -G, a -O0, and a -wall. If I click the 3 dots, the horizontal dots there, we can see enable all compiler warnings is what the -wall means. If I scroll down, we can see optimize for debugging is the -O0 and produce debugging information is the -G. And we can see those 3 options at the bottom here. -G, -O0, and -wall. We want to select one more option that's not currently highlighted, which is this one here. It's the 5th one down, and it's enable C++ 17 features. It's -std equals C++ 17. That's the code that will be added to this command line at the bottom. So I'm going to click that. We can see that that's what was added right there. And then I can click OK. All right, and then we can see that this has been changed. Cool. Now, we don't want to do that for this because we're not typing in C, we're typing in C++, so you don't have to worry about the C compiler options. The other thing we want to change now, coming back to the PowerPoint, so we're not going to click OK on this yet, is setting in the linker. This is for Windows only. So if you're watching this and you have a Mac, because it's different on Mac, do not use this option in your linker, okay? So just like we changed the option in compiler, we're going to come down to the linker and we're going to just add this -static flag in the linker options. And I'm going to show you how to do that in CodeLight right now. So just like I was in compiler, I'm going to come to the linker settings and I'm going to see linker options. It's blank currently. I can type in here right now. You can also click the 3 ellipses, but the -static is not in there right now. Okay, so I'm going to type -static. Now, what this does is basically a lot of errors are going to show up when this option is not turned on without this option. It's basically a lot easier to learn C++ with static turned on, because it'll just throw a whole bunch of errors and stuff that we don't need to worry about right now, okay? Because we're just trying to learn, we're just getting introduced to C++. So we're going to just turn -static on. We can hit apply and then OK. All right, so we can see that turn bold because it's applied. We can double check to make sure our compiler settings has the C++ 17, so we're using modern C++, and we'll hit OK. Cool. All right. Now, if you were looking before, you'll notice that there was some red arrows that indicated errors up here. It said it couldn't find IOStream. Now that I've enabled C++ 17, that error is gone. All right. So everything's saved because this is green. Another thing I wanted to talk about is this little minus button. This may happen to you. You may already know about it, but I just want to cover it. If you accidentally click to the left of this main function, everything between lines 3 and 7 will get folded up. All right? And you'll just see these little 3 ellipses. Don't worry, your code's not deleted. Nothing has gone missing. But if you're ever programming and you can't find your code, just double check to make sure that there's no folded code. This is called code folding, and it is really useful when you have a program or a file that's thousands of lines of code. Basically, you can fold up the functions that you're not working on and then only focus on the ones that you are working on. That way you don't have to scroll through thousands and thousands of lines of code. Our projects will be pretty small, so we won't have to use this right away, but maybe later on in the year, we'll be able to use code folding just to speed up some of the debugging process and stuff. So I'm just going to get rid of this empty space that I added earlier. There's that red line again because I haven't saved. I'll do Control S to make sure I've saved everything. And then we can actually build our project. Make sure you don't forget to add brackets. Yes, these brackets right here. The reason this code fold is here is because the brackets, right? If I don't have the bracket, well, first of all, I'll get a bunch of errors, but then I don't know if, oh, it still folds. But yes, it folds basically what's inside the brackets. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Now we're going to talk about running our projects. So there's multiple ways you can run. You can turn on the toolbar. I'm going to leave it off because it kind of looks a little bit cluttery, but I believe it's up. View, toggle toolbar, show toolbar right here. And you can kind of see there's these buttons with, build active project, stopped, clean active project, run active project. I'm going to turn that off just because it looks a little bit cluttery. And that way you know exactly how I'm doing what I'm doing, and everything I click, you can see how I access it. So basically we're going to come up to build and run here, okay? So build and run. You can also do Control F5 if that's a little quicker for you. I'll click it like this. And we're going to get this pop-up window saying, would you like to build the active project before executing it? We're going to talk about what it means by active project. But right now we only have one project in this workspace. So it's going to only build this project. So we don't have to worry about our project not being the active project. Our project's the only project. We have two options. We can build and execute, or we can execute. Building will basically use the compiler to translate that source code into object code, and it will build those .obj files. And then once their object code has been built, the linker will link to the external library, the IOStream, and then we'll get an executable file and it will run. Okay, so if we do build and execute, which we're going to click right here, we'll see it builds, and now it's executing. So this output window at the bottom is going to tell us what's happening. Now, on my other window, it just popped up here, is my command prompt. And we can see it says hello world right there. Okay, so that's exactly what we were expecting. That's awesome. It's exactly what I typed in here. It did a output to the command line, hello world. And if you press any key to continue, I'm just going to press enter. This will disappear. So I'll just press enter here. Oh, it should just, Okay, not enter. I pressed the letter G and then it disappeared. So maybe enter is not an option, but you just press any key and then the command line disappears. And we can see down here, the program exited. So we have our workspace view here on the left. We have our text editor for our source code here. And then the one window I haven't talked about yet is this one at the bottom, which is our output view. All right. Now there's a bunch of different tabs here, but the main ones we'll be using is output and build. Okay. So in the build, if you ever have an error or you can't figure something out, okay, enter worked for you, cool. I might ask you to send me a screenshot of your build, right? And that will show me what's the error you're having. We can see mine compiled. So it translated the source code into the object code with 0 errors and 0 warnings. Now in the output's a little bit different. It's just the output of the actual executable file. It executed in command prompt, and then it paused because it was waiting for user input, right? It said press any key, and then it exited when I pressed that key. The build output is what's going to contain our errors. Okay, so these are the two main ones, build and output. These other ones, search and replace, those are going to be handy later on when you have to change a name for something. If you're going to rename a file or rename a variable, if you've decided to change the name of something, then we can do a global search. You can even change the names over an entire project if you have to. But for now, we'll just worry about build and output. Okay, you can change these the size however you like. So coming back to the PowerPoint, we did our linker settings, we ran our project, we did build and execute, and then you should have gotten this output. Did everybody get this output in their command prompt? I'm assuming Jillian, sorry, no, Mila, you said yours worked. Cool, that's awesome. Hoorah, awesome, cool. That's great. Everybody else, no questions? You've already finished all the steps in the PowerPoint, honestly. No worries, Jillian. We're just taking it at the speed that everybody can keep up with. If you go ahead, that's totally up to you. No worries. Okay, so now we're going to play around a little bit with errors, right? So don't be afraid of errors. Don't think that your program's completely broken. We're going to go back to CodeLite here. And what happens if we remove this semicolon and try to build it? So if I remove the semicolon and I save it, and then I try to build the project, we're going to get an error that says error expected semicolon before the return statement. And you'll see there's a little red arrow here that's going to be pointing to the line roughly that the error is on. If I click it, it's actually going to take me to where the error is. So if I click it, it moves my cursor. If I have this highlighted up here and I click the error, it moves my text cursor to where the error is happening. So this is a really helpful error message. It's expecting a semicolon before the return. Great. So we can just add that. Cool. Next, so that was if we remove the semicolon. The installation of compiler on Mac OS X. There's steps here if you want to run the compiler on Mac. I'll just skip through these because no one said they're on a Mac, so we'll just go through all those. Installing CodeLite on Mac OS X and changing your security settings. Setting up your CodeLite environment on Mac OS X. I have all of these in the PowerPoint, but we don't have to worry about that. Okay, cool. So we have that, and what we can do now. All right. So we're going to make a new project. Well, we have our current project. That's fine. Actually, we'll just do this from here. I want to make sure. Slide 51. Okay, so we just have a little bit more. Hold on, everyone. Jillian, if you're already ahead, that's okay. No worries. So we're going to create a custom project template, like I mentioned earlier. And I just want you guys to get comfortable with creating workspaces and projects and everything like that. So we're going to create a new workspace. So you can do that. Basically, we'll come to CodeLite. We can make sure everything is saved. Close this, and you can right-click on your workspace, and you can close your workspace. You also, I don't think you have you don't have to close it. You can just do workspace. Oh, no, you do. Close workspace from up here. So we can click new workspace. And what we're going to create here is basically a basic template that we can use as a starting point for all our C++ projects. It'll save us a lot of time so we don't have to redo the settings every single time we make a project. And then we'll have our C++ file written, project settings, file settings, all pre-configured for every project we make. So we'll click New Workspace here, C++, and hit OK. We're going to create the workspace. You can call it My Workspace. I already have one called My Workspace because I already did this for the PowerPoints, but My Workspace, you can call it My Workspace. I'll call it My Test Workspace. Make sure you have no spaces and click this, okay? And our workspace should show up on the left-hand side. Cool. So what we're going to do now is right-click on the My Test Workspace or My Workspace and go into the workspace settings. In here, you're going to want to turn on code completion. So we're going to go to the code completion tab and then enable C++ 17 standard code completion. Code completion basically, as you're typing, say you're typing the word IO stream, include IO stream. When you get to the iOS and you're typing the S, it'll give you little hints for what you want, and it's going to try to guess what you're trying to type. I think you guys have code completion in Java when you've done that, so this is how you enable it for C++. We'll hit OK right here. Cool. So we did that. We enabled C++ standard. Awesome. So now we're going to want to create a new project again inside of our new workspace. Right-click, new project. And remember, we're going to want to have the same settings that we used last time. I'm going to call this project 1 again inside of this workspace. Create this project in its own folder. Simple executable G++. The category is console. Min GW as our compiler. GNU GDB debugger and default for the build system. And click OK. We expand these folders, we can see our C++. We're going to delete all of this code, and then we're going to type our own C++ code. So we'll start with pound include IO stream. A common error is people type IO steam. Make sure you have the R, all right? Pound include IO stream. Then we'll do int main, open parentheses, close parentheses, open bracket, close bracket, std : C out, my template. We'll use the output operand, std : endl. Sometimes people put two L's here, endll. Make sure you just do one L. Those are just common errors to look out for. Semicolon to close that, and then return 0. And semicolon to close that line. All right? So that's your code right there. Okay? Awesome. Now, before we do anything, you can save it. We're going to want to make sure we've done these compiler options again and added static to our linker. All right? So we'll go back to Code Light, Control S, and then we're going to right-click our project 1, go into Settings. I want you guys to get comfortable with doing that. It's interesting that you have to return 0. You know Java would throw a fit. Unless in Java you're expecting an integer as a return, but yes, totally. And then we're going to want to enable C++ 17 features. I've highlighted these in the PowerPoint if you're getting lost. But yes, we want these 4, okay? Hit OK, come to your linker. Remember, this step is for Windows only. We type -static. Awesome, we hit apply, and then we hit OK. All right, you can't create a new workspace. So you have to close your current workspace, Mila, and then you can create a new workspace. The way you close a workspace is you do workspace, close workspace. or you right click your workspace, close workspace. Cool. Awesome. So these are the settings we want enabled, these 4. And then in linker, you want to add the static flag. All right. Now we're going to build our project to make sure it runs, and we're going to hopefully see this in the output window. And it should say 0 errors, 0 warnings. So I'm going to do build, run, build and execute project. I can see it says it's building it down here in the build window. It says 0 errors, 0 warnings. If I bring my console window over, it says my template. Perfect. So that's exactly what we expected. So I can close this, just press any key to continue, and now we can save it as a template. We can save it as a template for our future projects by right-clicking the project one and clicking Save as Template right here. A new window will pop up right here, and you can call it whatever you like, CPP-template, and then you're going to want to save it instead of under console, you want to save it under user templates. This is just going to be where it appears when you're creating a new project. And because it's a template, we'd like to save it under the templates folder. And you can give it a description of C++ template. All right. I'm going to hit OK and save this as a template. So basically all I did was I gave my template a name. I saved it under the category of user templates, and then I just gave it a description. You can do this in the future if you want to create a different template for your other projects. So we're going to click OK, and now we can try using that template. So we're going to create another new project in the same workspace, but this time we're going to create the project based off of the template that we just created. So I'm going to right click my test workspace, new project. And now we have all the settings here that we normally pick. I'm going to type in project 2. But instead of category console, I'm going to do category user templates. This is where I saved my last user template, so it should be under here when I click type. Now, under the type dropdown, we'll see there's a couple other templates, and then there's my CPP template that I did. I'm going to click CPP template, and then the rest of these will stay the same. MinGW, GNU GDB, debugger, and default. Awesome. So we can click OK, and that's going to create a second project. Now, something interesting to notice in Code Lite is it runs on the active project model. What that means is that there can be multiple projects in a workspace, but only one project is active at a time. So in the workspace panel, notice how the project 1 is bold and italicized. This is because it's the current active project. Code Lite will only build and run the active project because it uses the active project model. So when you run build at the top, it's only going to build the code or the source code in the active project. So sometimes you may be editing or working on a project and thinking you're doing all the work on the one, and then you hit build and nothing happens. It's because it's building a different project. So you just have to double check and make sure that you're doing the work in the active project. We can change what the active project is by right-clicking and selecting Make Active on Project 2, or you can just double-click it in the workspace view. So if I right-click Project 2, I can see Make Active is right there, or I can just double-click it, and we can see it changed to bold. All right, I can expand this and open this, and you can have the code from both open. And look, we can see the template code is already in there. So everything, if I even right-click and I look at the settings, all the settings should already be in there in my compiler. So there's my C++17, and in my linker, the dash static flag has already been added. So I never have to do that again because it's used my template. Cool. So make sure we double check our settings and double check that the code is all in there. And that just means that our template worked. This is great. So now we never have to do that compiler or linker settings every time we make a new project. We can just use that template. So that's all for this PowerPoint. You can build and run this project actually to make sure that it's working. Build, run, build and execute. It should have 0 errors because it had 0 errors when I built it in the template. Bring it over, it says my template, press any key to continue, 0 errors, 0 warnings. Awesome. That's great. Any questions? Is everybody caught up? Can everybody get that working? Did the templates work? Do you know how the active project model works? I can switch between project 1 and project 2 just by double clicking. You can also use this arrow here, project 1 debugger release. We're going to always be on debug, okay? Project 2 debug. I thought you could switch between the projects there, but you can't actually, so never mind with this. Any questions? Thumbs up. Everybody's happy? Cool. One last thing I want to show you guys is if you're ever in a tight jam and you don't have your computer on you, or your code editor isn't working, or say you're at a friend's house and they don't have C++ installed, you can use C++ in a web browser, which is actually really cool. So open up a web browser right now. We'll just minimize code light for now and go to the address cpp.sh. I'll put it in the chat. And just visit that website. I'll go to it in my browser right now as well, so you can see it firsthand, cpp.sh. And it's basically a C++ shell that we can use in our web browser. So this is very handy if your computer's broken, or if you're not at your computer, you're at a friend's house, they don't have CodeLight installed on their machine. You basically type your C++ code in here, and then you can click run. So if I copy my code from CodeLight and I paste it in here, and then I hit run, okay, you can click or check off options down here. So C++ 14, C++ 11, warnings, W all, remember we had that, optimization, and then the standard text or standard input. This is if you want to be able to input text or not, and we'll talk about that later if you want it to be interactive or not. Thanks, Jillian. We can click run. You can see it compiled there, and then it actually just output what we would have seen in our command prompt window right here. You can click this button here as well to get a URL, and it will generate a URL to your code. So if you ever wanted to keep your code for later, it'll store it online. I'm not sure how long it'll store it. It's probably not indefinitely, but it's probably long enough that if you coded, you know, while you're away or you don't have your computer, and then you save that link and send it to your phone, that say in a week you could go to that link again and grab that code and put it on your actual machine. So that is kind of cool that you can just share your code like that. There's a couple other options. So going back to the PowerPoint here, it runs and compiles in the browser. We talked about the get URL. You can look at the errors in the web. So if you have an error in your code, say if we forgot our semicolon and we hit run, there'll actually be an error here, and it will say same thing that we expected from CodeLight, expected semicolon before return. And then we can see up here the X is kind of near where the error is. So we can just add that again. Cool. There's another option at www.onlinegdb.com. So you can visit that there. It's got a little bit more snazzy of a text editor with some color coding and a dark theme. There's also IDE1.com, which is also a C++ text editor for online. So just something to keep in mind while you, if you ever are in a sticky situation, you can do C++ online, which is kind of cool. Awesome. So we didn't cover as much as I wanted to today, just with getting everything set up in our environment and all of that. But we did get a couple programs working with CodeLight and C++. We got some basic text output to the text editor, to the command prompt window. We got our G++ working with our compiler. We know how to build projects. We know how the workspace view with the active project model works. We know how to create new projects in our workspaces. We know how source code gets translated to object code and then linked to other outside libraries and then turned into an executable file. We know how to use our output view and read errors and warnings, and we know how to look at the other output view to see the executing file itself. We also learned how to make a template and then save that template and then create a project using that template. So hopefully this was a useful session for you guys to kind of get your hands dirty with some very basic C++ and get your environment set up. I will be posting a couple things online for you to challenge yourself throughout the week, just to get your hands a little bit more, just to get yourself a little bit more comfortable with C++ and to challenge yourself a little bit. You can look into those. I'll be posting some PowerPoints, and then we'll continue with the rest of this stuff next week. And we'll be talking about compiler errors, how to read errors, and writing our first program. So super excited to do C++ with you guys this semester. We've got a lot of fun stuff in store for us. And yeah, I hope you guys have a good week. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me or ask me. If everybody's okay right now, then I'll stop the recording and this will be the end of the meeting. But it was a great meeting, everyone. If you have any questions quick, you can ask them in the chat now while I'm available. But if everybody's okay and they've got their project up to this point, then I think that that's a wrap for today. Thanks, Mila. Thanks, Raymond. Have a good week. See you, Kyojin. Thanks, Dan. All right, I'm going to stop the recording here, guys. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.